right, I'm going to call the committee of the whole meeting for Monday, August 15th, 2022 to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Gaffino.
Here.
Trustee Carroll.
Here.
Trustee Curtis.
Here.
Trustee Gately.
Here.
Trustee Lowry.
Here.
Trustee Nedved.
Here.
Trustee Salazar.
Here.
All right, thank you. Audience comments? Nobody signed up? Nobody's here. Trustee comments? Okay, discussion item 1, Steve.
Oh, Steve got caught.
Sorry, I was checking the speakers.
That's okay.
Item number 1 on the agenda tonight is the EMA manual or emergency management agency. So Scott Puzecki, the Deputy Chief Puzecki, is actually going to come live via Zoom. This is a new manual that we created to oversee the EMA and all the volunteers that serve it. And he's going to walk us through what's in the policy manual, and then we're going to adopt it later, where the board is going to vote to adopt it or not. Go ahead, Scott, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Steve. So this manual is basically almost like an employee manual, covers all of the terms of the EMA volunteers from beginning to end. It starts with a purpose and policy statement. Basically, the purpose is to provide the volunteers with a standard of conduct and give them a guide to operate in a professional industry standard manual, how we'd want them to represent the village. After that, just standards of conduct is generally, workplace civility, sexual harassment and bullying and things like that are not allowed. Alcoholic beverages are not allowed. Really basic things like that you expect in a workplace. The next section is on application and probation, and this just specifies how people become volunteers, how they apply, what we require. The background check procedures that we do, which is basically we do a fingerprint background check, just like you do with the police, a driver's license abstract, reference check, police records check. So it's a very thorough background check, and this just spells that out. It spells out the divisions of the EMA, which is field services, basically everything in the field, essentially what the current CERT volunteer program does right now. The search and rescue division. We have volunteers that already are on the search and rescue team. And then community outreach is basically all public education programs, such as teaching the CERT program to the public, teaching emergency preparedness to the public, things that we've done in the past. We just have a division for that now. And then a train division that's responsibility is to train the volunteers internally. Moving on to organization, I talked about that. So minimum participation requirements. All members are required to volunteer a minimum of 40 hours per year, and that number is based on previous volunteer data from 2017 to 2019 to make sure it was fair and we're not asking unreasonable things of our volunteers. In addition, the field services people, we asked them to respond to 2 unplanned callouts. These would be like car accidents or wires down. If we have enough, if we don't, then we would understand them not making 2. And then we also asked them to make 2 planned details. That would be like North Aurora Days, some of the parades that we have, and some other planned events. We asked them to make it to 2 per year. We also asked them to attend 6 out of the 10 monthly training classes per year. We think those are pretty reasonable things. We hope people will volunteer more than that to give us some worthwhile activities, but that's the minimum that we ask of them. The next section is on training requirements. These are the ongoing training that we require: CPR and first aid, traffic control, weather spotting, damage assessment, power line safety, natural gas safety, hazmat awareness, bloodborne pathogens, and that we ask them to attend 6 training classes per year. So our training division would be responsible for scheduling and tracking all of this training. The next section is on vehicle operation. The volunteers are required to have an Illinois driver's license with appropriate class. They're required to have proof of vehicle insurance to operate their personal vehicle on village business. So that means if there's a call out where there's wires down and members have to respond there to do traffic direction, they're allowed to drive their personal car, but only for transportation to get there. We only have 2 village vehicles that are assigned to EMA. And so they can drive there, legally park somewhere, and then do the traffic direction. But we require that they're covered by their own insurance during that time. For our vehicles, our village-owned vehicles that have emergency lights and sirens, we require that they're only used when operating our vehicles on the way to a scene, if authorized by a supervisor or a police officer. Personal vehicles are never allowed to be used for traffic control. That is, like you might see a police car stop blocking traffic. We never allow personally owned vehicles to do that, because we don't want to get into the mess of, if somebody's car gets hit, whose insurance covers it and all that. We'd rather just stick with the village owned vehicles, just like we do with police cars. And finally, that section covers procedures for if there's accident or injuries while on village business, making statements, things like that. So the next section is just on what the cars will look like when they're switched over. These graphics have our logo on it, and so that's what it would look like. And then the next slide is what the back of the vehicle looks like. Next section is volunteer service awards. This is just how we recognize our volunteers for the work that they do for us. A number of different things. The basic one is if they complete their 40 hours per year, we give them a certificate. We've also jumped onto a national program called the President's Volunteer Service Award, that we input hours, and then the program sends out award letters for that. The other ones are just recognition for extra things like life-saving, meritorious service, or extra training levels that they've achieved. Personal appearance standards is grooming standards, and these are very much in line with a professional paramilitary organization like a police department or a fire department. There are limits on the wearing of jewelry. There are limitations on tattoos or body art. Basically, nothing offensive that would be racial, sexual, gang related, or obscene. And that the EMA coordinator and or the chief of police ultimately decide that. We don't really expect that to be an issue. It's not an issue with our police officers, but it's just something we have in there just in case, so that we make sure that our volunteers are representing the village in a professional way. The next section is the dress code and uniform standards. Pretty very basic stuff. The Class A uniform, we're not going to have one at this time. Class A is basically like the police uniform. It's like what Chief Leo is wearing tonight. We won't have one of those for the volunteer program at this time. It's something that could be added in the future, but we don't have any plans to do that right now. But we thought it was important that the uniforms are named consistently, so we're not confused over we're talking about EMA or police or whatever. The Class B uniform is kind of like a dress uniform for the volunteers, very much similar to the CERT uniform where you see them wearing the dark green polo shirts. These EMA shirts would be light blue with the logo and their name embroidered, be worn with dark navy blue pants, and when outside in inclement weather with yellow jackets. The Class C uniform is the same, except this is more of a work uniform with a dark blue EMA t-shirt worn in place of the polo. Basically a work shirt that takes dirt a little better, it's going to hold up a little bit better than a polo. Polo was more of a dress thing. And the next slide is to show you what those would look like. So that's the light blue uniform polo, and then the dark navy blue t-shirts. The next section covers the supervisor rank structure. So beginning at the top would be my position, the EMA coordinator. The next one is the lead supervisor, basically the highest ranking volunteer that oversees the program. Then supervisors, similar to the current team leaders we have with the CERT program. And then specialist in charge would be like an acting supervisor. If there was no supervisor there, the highest ranking person would take over. And then the specialist, that's the frontline volunteer, would be known as an EMA specialist. The supervisors would be chosen by me with input from the chief, of course. The next section is supervisor training requirements. Supervisors are asked to do 60 hours per year, 20 more than the average volunteer, and a few other requirements to kind of up their training and ability. And then the lead supervisor is responsible for a little bit more than that, and kind of getting into some more core emergency management training, asking them to complete the Illinois Professional Development Series through the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, and be willing to teach. So basically, as you move up in the organization, we're asking you to do a little bit more and to raise your level of knowledge and ability. The next section is communications, and it just specifies what communication platforms we have and the frequencies that volunteers may utilize and the ones that they can't utilize. And then the final section is just on village property, that they complete a signed receipt when we issue them property, and there are procedures for the loss or damage of equipment and how we go about, assigning blame and paying for those. And that is it. I know that's fast, but I didn't want to take up too much of your time. Does anybody have any questions about it?
I think it's very good. Well put together.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I just had one question, Scott.
Sure.
It's fantastic that people volunteer and do this because it does free up police, instead of doing traffic and things and others things also. But can you expand on the lights and siren thing a little bit for me? When would lights and siren be needed? Do they get training prior, like defensive driving or anything? How's that work?
I would say 99% of responses would be no lights and siren. They would be driving at the normal flow and speed of traffic. They would be using lights when they arrive at the scene as scene lighting, similar to when you have a crash and you see police cars stop with their lights going. That's primarily what would be done. In a very rare case where there's a life-threatening situation where they're needed to stop traffic, it could be authorized. I just wanted to have that option there, that if a supervisor or a police officer, someone of more authority, authorize that they could get there faster. Still though, if we allow them to put the lights and siren on, they're not allowed to exceed the speed limit, proceed through red lights. Basically, they would just be having people move out of their way.
Like a courtesy light, whatever.
Yeah, whereas like police cars and fire trucks and ambulances are allowed to go through red lights with due caution, but these days that doesn't happen because of the traffic features. So with the volunteers, it's going to be almost never that they're using the lights and siren, but it's just a small possibility that it might be needed someday in the future.
All right, thank you. That's good. All right,
I think it's fine.
good.
I think it's a great idea.
Great. All right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks.
I like it. Looks
Yep,
thorough.
Thank you.
Put together.
All right, item 2, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 2 is a tweak we're looking to do to our lateral transfer program to make us more competitive in the marketplace. Chief DeLeo.
Thanks, Steve. Currently, the police department has a lateral transfer program. We began that in 2020 when COVID shut down most of the police academies. We had to think outside the box somewhat to attract officers, and they're already certified, so they don't have to go to the police academy. They basically just enter into an FTO program, and usually it's expedited because they've already gone through another FTO program. At that time, there wasn't as much competition in the area because we're one of the few departments in the area offering that program. That has changed. Every department has a lateral transfer program. It's comical, but one of the officers has deemed it the free agency of police departments. So currently the HR manual allows the village administrator to authorize a lateral transfer police officer start no higher than step 4, which is $78,537 without board approval. This salary is somewhat below our local competitors. Geneva PD starts at up to step 3, which is $86,855. And Batavia can slot up to step 6, which is $110,939. And all this depends on years of service and qualifications. For example, we have an officer who came from Oak Lawn with 10 years on, and he took a $30,000 pay cut just to get out of Cook County, and he lives close by. So that is what drew him to us. Luckily, there weren't any other agencies out there trying to grab him. We're looking for feedback on allowing a change to the human resource manual that authorizes a village administrator to start a lateral transfer officer anywhere within the current police officer pay scale, depending on qualifications and also on years of service.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So the officer from Oak Park, would he be able to, if we allow an increase, is he going to be able to come back and say, well, you know, I started 30,000 below and everybody else is coming in laterally?
We discussed that, and we mentioned if it became an issue, we would go to exec session, discuss it, but just like every other business, it's also timing. It worked out for him, and he knew the cost he would have to take a hit on to come to our agency. So really, it is what it is, kind of.
So Chief, you would take a police officer with similar experience in whatever town or village or city that person worked, then you would just slot them into our rate of pay. Is that what you're looking to do?
It would also depend on
Experience
qualifications.
level?
It would also depend on qualifications. What we've learned through the process, you could have an officer coming from Chicago PD with, say, 7 years on, but they don't get the type of training that a suburb would because just the sheer amount of officers. So you would have to look at his personnel file, training certificates, and just come to
Background.
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Then maybe we can get, help the, patrol officers, get people that are more qualified, right?
Yeah.
But I guess the question needs to be asked. I mean, when does the police academy open up? I mean, why should we be taking on seasoned officers when we've already got, plenty of our own versus hiring a new recruit at a lower pay scale?
Sure. But what you're seeing is when you get somebody new, you don't know the type of police officers that they're going to be. They're wet behind the ears. They go to the academy. You don't know if they're going to make it through the FTO program. When you look at this, you're getting a seasoned officer who has a proven track record. I could look at their personnel file at their department. Did they have any use of force issues? Did they make sound judgment? You don't know what you're getting with a new officer. But that being said, you also like to have a new officer because you train them in your ways. So you really have to do your due diligence and get the right fit, high character, well-trained, good person, can talk to people before you make that offer. We
There's a
did have
cost involved too with training. So you gotta, I don't know, what does the police academy cost us?
$3,500.
35. And
Yeah.
then if this guy, the new guy that from the academy, so like he has 10 weeks with FTO.
It's 16 weeks at the academy and then another 4 months with an FTO if he's not extended.
Right. So there's a cost there as well with
Yeah.
that 4 months with the FTO where the transfer would save us 3,500 plus maybe 4 weeks with the officer. And then, we're not double up and,
And
with that
another
training.
thing we're learning the hard way, when I was hired, we did a mass hiring. So we're coming to that point in time where we're going to be having a mass exodus just because we're all going to be reaching our 25 to 30 years. By sprinkling in some people with 5 years on, 7, 10, you're kind of staggering those retirements.
And you got guys with experience. I mean,
So I
5
think,
years experience, a lot better than somebody with no experience.
so really, we would trust their judgment on what level they would go. And I think it's a great idea, and we're kind of adequated with our current policy of, the lower fee. I think we want to attract some better police people.
I think this is going to be a policy. Sorry, Trustee Gailey. This is going to be something you'll see coming forward in the future, maybe even getting rid of that whole clause in the HR manual. With the way that hiring is going right now, John had the civil engineer job posted for months now, and we've had not one candidate interviewed. And to be more competitive, it isn't just about your comparables, it's about your geographical comparables. So even if on paper, our officers are paid in their contract comparable to the municipalities that we use for negotiations, that doesn't mean, like Chief DeLeo said, just up the road, Batavia and Geneva aren't in our comparable list. but geographically, they're in the same hiring pool as people we're trying to hire. So, right now our officers make in the mid 90s is where they top out. We're in the middle of, we actually just started renegotiating their contracts, so it should go up. But that being said, it is hard to get people quickly. The lateral transfer program is not designed to be the primary function of attracting officers here. It is a supplementary program. We have an officer who literally just graduated from the academy, a week ago?
Yes.
And we have another one slated to start in September. We have two openings right now. One's going to the academy. And then we have another opening that we're looking to maybe do lateral transfer. And then we have 2 people on light duty. So you got to look at their status and where they're going to end up. So we always have kind of a revolving door. We're very fortunate people want to come here. Chief DeLeo has told me that some other neighboring towns aren't so lucky with the amount of people testing. So it's just an opportunity to get somebody quicker. And just like if I was hiring an employee at Village Hall, I'm looking at their experience. Some of our staff doesn't start at step 1 either. It depends on what they were making in their other community, what their experience level is, their resume. And then you look at that and you say, okay, this person is probably worth at least step 3, 4, 5. We have the ability to go to the village board right now with a lateral. If someone came in and Joe said, I want to give them step 8, but it takes time because then we got to go to the village board and have an executive session to discuss that officer's hiring. During that 2 or 3 week period, the worry is that that person could be recruited by 2 other agencies that are constantly recruiting in our area and be like, well, why am I waiting for them? They're guaranteed $10,000 more and just go. So that's.
I like the idea of having, being competitive to the other communities surrounding. And it sounds to me like there's sort of a dual approach where you're going to get new cadets. And then also it's not going to be one or the other. And I think that you make a good point in saying that some of the officers are coming up in near retirement and you want a mix of people who have some experience to replace those officers who may be retiring.
I think this just brings us in line, the police department in line with the rest of our staffing. That we don't hire and then limit cap their salary. If we want the most experienced, most seasoned, most competitive police force, then we need to adjust to what the hiring procedures are. So I'm in favor. I think it's a good switch.
Yep.
I like the idea a lot. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I think goes without saying we should go ahead with it. So, yeah, I think as long as they're properly vetted and make sure that we're getting good quality staff, I don't see any reason to put limits on it.
And I do want to ease any concerns. We did have another group of applicants last year and nobody met our criteria of high character, quality individuals that we didn't even interview anybody.
All right.
Great.
Excellent.
Okay, thanks, Chief. All right, motion adjourned. We'll be going to exec session for 2 items. Property acquisition number 1 and property acquisition number 2.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same sign. Thank you.